What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Striking Gold, your 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Network. My name is Rob Lowder, and that's Kyle Posey. And we both cover the 49ers for all you folks on the other side of the speaker, on the other side of the screen. KP does that for NinersNation.com as well. KP, we did not record the pod yesterday because even though I tried to, just to clue you guys in, I have a horrible habit of not caring at all what's going on in the world. I recorded a podcast with Matt Barrows during the March Madness finals, the the championship game. He didn't mind, but thank God, he made sure I knew about it. And then I tried to record one during the NBA finals, which we did. I think we still did it anyways. And then I tried to record a podcast during the United States World Cup game, which was at Levi Stadium, but for now it's known as like the Bay Area Stadium or whatever they call it.
Yeah, you can't use the there.
So that being said, KP, how did you enjoy your watch party of the soccer game?
That was great, man. I mean, if you like sports, if you appreciate sports, and you get a chance to watch these games, these soccer games live around a crowd full of other people, I've done it the past two nights. So I did it last night when Rob tried to drag me in here. And saw the U.S. And then the night before, downtown Phoenix was basically like a giant block party for the Mexico game. So it was honestly one of the dopest things that sporting events that I've been to. Ton of people, a lot of fun. So no, this World Cup has been a ton of fun. So I would advise anybody, if you have a chance, if you like sports, just go outside and be around people, and just, you don't have to know a thing because I don't, but it's just fun to be around the environment.
I don't like sports.
Yeah. If you're listening to this, you probably like sports. So turn on the tube, get outside, and check out some soccer.
And as you can see, so I'm gonna clue you guys in a little behind the scenes, into a little conversation with KP and I. So I told him that we were trying to figure out what we were going to talk about. And I one of the things I said was, yeah, X Factors isn't a bad idea. And he's like, I like that. That'll work. And I said, and it also gives me a chance to make an X-Men joke too. And season 2 came out on Tuesday. And he goes, oh boy, something I'm sure everybody wants to hear. And I was like, exactly. So what I decided to do was, our podcast title is The 49ers X-Men Part 1. And the tweet I just sent out, if I remember to send it out, is like all the way X-Men. Let me go see what I wrote here. If I can get the X premium out of the way. I said, in honor of X-Men 97 Season 2, KP Show and I are breaking down the 49ers X Factors of 2026, starting with my picks on offense and his on defense. To me, my X-Men, in quotations, that means come hang out, or parentheses. So not only did I plan on making a mention of X-Men 97, KP's slander towards it made me go all the way in. But anyways, yeah, X-Men 97. And then what's funny is, in season 2 that just started on Tuesday, one of the groups that kind of comes into the fold that's new to the show is called X Factor. And that's what we're talking about today. We are talking about the 49ers X Factor. So it all worked out. It's full circle. So that's what we're gonna do. We are talking about now. Let me see. Let me find this picture that I sent to KP. I did a quick Google search and I put in what's an X factor on an NFL roster. And this is what Google said. It said in the NFL, an X factor refers to a player or non-quantifiable element that has a strong but unpredictable influence on a game's outcome. It typically describes a non-star player, a developing talent, or a key matchup advantage whose unexpectedly high-level performance dictates whether a team wins or loses. Jason Aponte says, "What the hell is your problem, KP? X-Men 97 slander, which X-Men 97 season 2 right now has a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes." So KP might be the only one to slander such a beautiful thing. Were you an X-Men guy? Did you ever watch X-Men as a kid or anything?
Yeah, like I'm familiar with the Beast. I was a big fan. Yes, I'm not saying that. There's been no X-Men slander in this conversation so far, so I'm not sure where this is coming from at all.
It's real.
As you were.
It's real. Yeah, season 1 was incredible. Considered by a lot of people to want to be one of the best things Marvel's ever done, even though it's a cartoon. And then season 2 so far has been outstanding. Check it out. But anyways, that's all I can justify talking about the X-Men on this here 49ers podcast. So X factors, again, players that, kind of one of the quantifiers is not star players. Somebody who, my own thought of an X factor leading up to this was kind of like somebody who could go either way. Like they could be a non-factor or they could be a total like game changer. So maybe that's kind of a simplified version of what that said, what Google was saying. But so here's how we're going to split this up. It's going to be a two-parter in X-Men 97 fashion because they've got part 1, part 2s, and part 3s. I'm going to do my offensive X factors today, and KP is going to do his defensive X factors today. And then on Monday of next week, we're going to flip-flop them. KP is going to do his offensive picks, and I'm going to do my defensive picks. And that is how we're going to roll this thing. So I'll start it off. And the one I'm going to start off with is probably the one, thanks to KP's encouragement, is probably the one I'm the least sure about. But I couldn't necessarily come up with one that I was more convinced by, I guess is a way of saying it, and that's Ricky Pearsall. Now, obviously, KP's response was, a first-round pick can't be an X factor. Like, they already are kind
of digging deep here.
I know, already digging deep. But at the same time, it's less about where Ricky Pearsall was picked and more about what he's become and where he sits within the offense. Because I think he's not forgotten by any means. No one's sitting here not talking about Ricky Pearsall, who sits way down the depth chart at number 2 at receiver, but to me, it's what his first 2 seasons looked like, the injuries he's dealt with. And again, kind of going back to my own definition of X factor, it could go this way or it could go that way, and I think the divergence in what we could get from Ricky Pearsall is so, I don't know what you'd call it. It's polarizing. You could be expecting nothing because he's just dealt with injuries since he got to the 49ers. Or we could be about to see far and away his best season. We know he can do it, but is he going to do it? Because he hasn't been able to stay on the field. So it's a really frustrating blend of problems when it comes to Ricky Pearsall. But now they've brought in a receiver who's better than him, who's done more than him, who's been in the league much longer than him, who's been there, done that. Looks like he's headed for the Hall of Fame in Mike Evans. So that takes a lot of heat off Ricky Pearsall. So there's just so many question marks that surround him in terms of what's he going to look like when he's not asked to be the man. Because last season, whenever he was on the field, he was essentially the man when he probably wasn't in any shape to be the man. Now they've got Mike Evans, and they've got a brand new, not a first-round rookie, but a high draft pick in Deshaun Stribling. And you got Ricky Pearsall there, who's going to have so much less heat put on him. It could be another season that's just riddled with injuries and we kind of just forget about his expectations, or it could be a season in which he explodes in some sort of way productively, based on the fact that there's just so many things around him that don't, there's so many other players that are going to take some heat off him. Mike Evans is going to open up space, and we'll see how that goes. So my first choice is the one I'm the least, convinced about, but I feel like there's so many question marks surrounding Ricky Pearsall and what he could be that's I stuck with it.
So you said you think this could be like it's going to be, I don't want to say a make or break, but for lack of better words, that's what you're saying. Do you think we see the best version of him, or do you think we've seen the best of Pearsall already?
Well, I think, and I may have said this on the pod. I don't need to see anything more from Ricky Pearsall, the player on the field when he's healthy. Like he's already shown me that he can do it. The pace he was on at the start of last season was ridiculous. Like he was top 3 in receiving yards and was on pace at one point for like 1,600 yards or something silly like that. And obviously this is why nobody goes off paces, because they rarely end up just panning out like that. But
you cannot extrapolate 4 games to an entire season, or else you would pay Ricky Pearsall like a top 5 wide receiver.
Right. So when you mentioned make or break, it is a little bit like this is his 3rd season. At the end of this year, I believe they're going to have to choose if they pick up his 5th-year option. And depending on how this year looks, is probably going to be the one thing that they might already be leaning no based on how his first 2 seasons went. That doesn't mean that they won't want to keep him around, but they're not going to want to keep him around at the salary that a 5th-year option at receiver is going to demand, which is, I think, getting close to like high 20s, right? Is that where the 5th-year option is for a receiver? So, you could, the 49ers at the end of this season are either going to be saying, I love what I just saw from Ricky Pearsall, can't, let's roll, or they're going to be saying we need to look elsewhere. And they may already have that answer in house in Deshaun Stribling, but it's not like they plan on keeping Mike Evans long term either. So they kind of need him to work out.
I would agree. Okay, we're going to flip sides here. I'm going to do defense. So my first one, somebody we've talked about a little bit, or I guess I would say quite a bit. I'm going to go, I did one for each level. So I'm going to start with safety, and I'm going to go Malcolm Mustafa. I think for this defense to reach its peak, to reach its ceiling, to be the best version of itself. And if you kind of go back throughout the years when the 49ers have been the 49ers defense under Kyle Shanahan, there was like some very good play from Jimmy Ward and Kwaski Tart. There was some very good play from Tayshaun Gibson. Talanoa Hufanga was an all-pro. I'm not saying Malcolm Mustafa has to be an all-pro, but he needs to be Pro Bowl level if the 49ers are going to be a top 10 defense. I don't think that's going to be Jair Brown. I think Malcolm Mustafa has shown that he's capable of doing that. Of course, he needs to stay healthy too, right? He needs to show that he can't be as reckless as he was during spurts last season. And I keep going back to his rookie year because it seemed like he was under control. Sure, there were some misses, but there was so much good play that he put on the field. So I think when it's all said and done, if we're looking back by season's end and, the 49ers defense are really good, it's not just going to be because of the defensive line. It's going to be because they got some stellar or plus play in the secondary. And I think that's going to be because of Malcolm Mustafa. So I think Malcolm Mustafa he is like the X factor of X factors for this team, because if he is good, if he ends up being, I don't want to say a ball hawk, but he ends up just shutting down stuff deep, like Jimmy Ward and Kwaski Tart did, like Tayshaun Gibson did, I think they have a really, really good chance of being an upper echelon defense. Maybe not elite, but a very good one. And that's going to be good enough with how good we project the offense to be. So for me, I'm going to go Malcolm Mustafa. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that he can be a Pro Bowl level player with how he performed during year one. Year removed from the knee injury, so you think he gets a little bit more burst back, right? He's flying around a little more. Maybe he's more sure of himself. Maybe he's a little hesitant last year because he was playing, on an injured leg. So we'll see. That's a little bit of projection, right? There's some hope in there, but I think he's proven it enough where I think it's not a stretch to say he can be that guy. So Malcolm Mustafa is my top X factor, and maybe if Rob was doing it the least confident, I would say this is my most confident. So I'll go Mallet.
Now, when you say most confident, are you saying you're the most confident that he's an X factor, or you're the most confident that he's going to work out?
I'm saying it's my most confident pick of the X factors that I'm going to.
Okay. Yeah, man, it's tough, and the 49ers have a few of them, and it's one of my picks on defense. I could tell you is going to be like a household name, but I've already talked about him, and it's one of those players that the 49ers just need to be good in Malik Mustafa. Like, Malik Mustafa being good, even serviceable to good, would solve so many problems for the 49ers. They'd be like, okay, we've got Malik Mustafa's good. We can pencil him in or pen him in onto the depth chart at that spot. And then they kind of just have to work things out at the other spot. Is it Ashton Davis? Is it Marquise Siegel? Is it Jair Brown? It would just kind of solidify things in the same way that like Renardo Green, when we talked about him, would just help out the defense so much in eliminating question marks and helping that group figure out, just find some sort of sense of solidarity, some sense of stability is probably the word I'm looking for. Like, it feels like everything's constantly in flux. I mean, even especially with the defense, and you think about players coming and going, players losing their starting role and regaining it. With the Jair Brown going out, the Marquise Siegel coming in, then Marquise Siegel going out, Jair Brown coming back in. It's even happening at linebacker with their third linebacker over and over. And we're seeing a defensive line, they're having to switch some guys out. So there's so much ins and outs that any guy that can just grab a role and hold on to it would be just it would go a long ways. It's simplistic, but they need Malik Mustafa, that's for sure. Safety, I think you and I both had safety as one of the team's weakest position groups, did we not?
Unquestionably, like bottom two, I think is where it was.
Yeah, so they need it. They need a Malik to come around and just win the job unconditionally. Vic said, Rob, who's winning F1 this weekend and why is it Maximilian Verstappen? I don't know. What is it, Silverstone this weekend? Man, Max already made some comments just about how much that track sucks with the new F1 regulations and the way the batteries work. So he doesn't seem all that excited about it. I don't know. Maybe Kimi gets back on the podium. I would love it. Was cool to see Max competing for the win. He should have won that race, but they kind of screwed him over with the pit strategy. But hopefully Max is just up there on the podium again. It's always fun to see him competing. Okay, so it's my turn. Back to me. As you can see from the thumbnail, if you're on YouTube, my next pick for the 49ers X Factors on offense in 2026 is tight end Jake Tonjes. Now, KP, before I even... No, well, I'll say why, but you told me in the text that you weren't a fan of Tonjes as the pick, because we initially were trying to just hash him out together.
Spitball.
I like Tonjes as an X Factor because... for multiple reasons. One, in the beginning of the season, for who knows how long, he's going to be counted on to be the man at tight end. And they have not brought in anybody else to compete with him. One of the other topics we were thinking about talking about today was which group still needs more added to it, which group could still use some additional players, and we'll probably still talk about that at some point. But tight end would be one of mine because you've got Jake Tonjes, who... you can call him a proven commodity if you want. He at least proved that he could do it, that he can be an NFL player, and he belongs on an NFL field. And he won the 49ers game. He had a game-winning catch in Seattle. That's what the thumbnail is for the YouTube channel. But now all of a sudden he's put in a spot, and he's been put in this spot a couple times before because George Kittle's missed time before. But we always spend so much time in talking about who the 49ers could add next to George Kittle. Well, Jake Tonjes step forward likely means that he's now considered the guy next to George Kittle, and the 49ers don't necessarily need to look elsewhere. The weirdest discovery about Jake Tonjes, when I was looking at his performance stuff, was PFF had him as the second highest graded run blocking tight end in the NFL, which is not at all what I would have expected. His pass blocking isn't great, but that I assumed, based on the fact that he is basically a huge pass catcher. Go watch Jake Tonjes' high school highlights. He's basically a big receiver dominating everybody. Just assume that he wouldn't have any prowess in the run game, but he's actually pretty good in it. So not only he's going to be asked to be the bona fide guy at the start of the season, which we're assuming George Kittle's not going to be back in week one. KP and I both kind of agree with that. And then after that, he could still be a dude. We just keep asking for the 49ers to bring somebody in opposite George Kittle that can make an impact. Well, maybe what Jake Tonjes does at the start of the season makes the 49ers, or leans the 49ers towards just allowing him to be more a part of the lineup in a more, what's the word I'm looking for here? Just have more of an impact on the offense when George Kittle is back too. So I think that Jake Tonjes could evolve as a much more prominent pass catcher. I mean, the dude had 5 touchdowns last year. You don't just randomly fall on 5 touchdowns in the NFL. But could go either way. It could kind of, he could just replace Kittle in the beginning and then kind of just fall into obscurity. But they haven't necessarily brought in anybody that's going to replace him. And if he has, starts the season off big, then he could develop into another reliable playmaker for the 49ers that maybe Kyle Shanahan works into the fold, even when George Kittle's back. Why did you not like the Jake Tonjes pick, KP?
I'm just not sure if he ends up being so to me, when I'm looking at the roster, when I'm looking at the weapons that are on the roster, I think he might be more of a Juwan Jennings where he does come in on third down type situations and he's used like minimally, but I don't think it's going to be a thing where they're relying on Jake Tonjes like consistently in the passing game. I don't think it's going to work that way. So that's when I said I was just thinking of opportunity. I don't think the opportunity is going to be there for him. So that's why I was a little hesitant when it comes to Jake Tonjes. But like, I'm not taking away what he did last year. I don't want to say he won them games, but he kept them in a ton of games. Like it was very impressive what he did. Still, I would say again, like the opportunity is going to make it tough for him to even qualify for an X factor. As I guess the easiest way to put it.
My only pushback on that would be one, at least if it plays out how you and I think, he should have plenty of opportunity to start the season. And just given where Kittle's at in his career, there may be opportunity late in the season too.
Also true.
Kittle's got to stay on the field. That's just he's at that point. So
what I was thinking and where I'm going with this was, okay, like let's say Kittle's out the first couple of games. To me, they're going to rely on multiple receivers, multiple running backs. I think that's where we'd see the passing game go to, as opposed to Jake Tonjes, who could end up having like 4 catches, but it's going to be like 4 for 30, like that kind of thing. He might pick up a few first downs here and there, but again, I don't think it's going to be a situation where it's like 7 for 70 type thing. So that's why I say that.
Okay, who's your number 2 on defense?
I went with I'll stick with the least confident one now. Linebacker, Nick Martin. And we're just talking about injuries, right? So I would imagine the next man up, maybe it's Duggar, but more realistically, I think they're going to give the third rounder a shot at will. This is under the pretense that Dre Greenlaw does not make it through the season. You have to bring in somebody else. And even if that's not the case, let's say they just have a third linebacker and they need a pass rusher, which this team needs a pass rusher. I think that's where Nick Martin's background from college comes into play. He's super fast. That's going to play always and forever. And I just think that kind of versatility, be able to rush from off the line of scrimmage in the A gap. Raheem Morris can move him around the formation a little bit. I think Duggar might be a year away, but with Martin, he's a third round. You got to see what you have. You got to really dig in to see, okay, like, did we waste a pick on this dude or not? So his athleticism profile is a big reason why I'm selecting him, but also Greenlaw's injury history. I just think that Martin, like, potentially we could be looking back at this dude and let's say he has 3 sacks, 4 sacks, and he's just a guy who produces on a level where, what's a good comparison for Nick Martin? I don't have one off the top of my head. I don't want to say something just ridiculous where it would be nowhere close to that. But I think his pass rushing profile gives him an opportunity to play. And because of that, he is going to play. And then with the other names like Osadezua, Nick Bosa, all the defensive line names, it's going to open up things for Nick Martin. So I think Nick Martin's an X factor who might be, a little obscure off the radar, but I would not put it past him to make an impact. Not like a Fred Warner type of impact, but again, if Greenlaw's down, somebody has to play, and I don't think that somebody's going to be the guys like last year. I don't think it's going to be a Garrett Wall. I think they're going to give Nick Martin a chance, and in year 2, they need to see what they have in him. So that's why I went with Nick Martin. Is that a stretch?
I don't think so, man. It's when you started talking about the way that Nick Martin could be used, my first thing I thought of, especially coming on from Raheem Morris, is, what if he saw him as like a lighter version and more incapable, for sure, a lesser version of like a Jalen Walker who they just drafted, like it's a linebacker that has the ability, and Jalen Walker is like a legit pass rusher that the Falcons drafted out of Georgia. But somebody like that who has a little bit of chops in the pass rush game and a little bit of chops as a blitzer, but is perfectly comfortable doing linebacker stuff. And again, you're talking about where did he went 15th? Jalen Walker went 15th overall. Nick Martin was considered like a third round reach. You know, a lot of people had him as like a fifth rounder or a sixth rounder. Who missed most of the final year of his college season. I can't remember why he missed it. He had an injury, but I can't.
Yeah, he got hurt like game 5 or whatever.
Can't remember what the injury was, but as of right now, the way the 49ers handle linebackers, and one of the reasons we haven't seen Nick Martin much is because he is a designated will linebacker. He is, as of now, Dre Greenlaw's backup. Now, I don't know if like Garrett Wallow has replaced him there. He's the only other person that got legitimate starting snaps last season that the 49ers could consider. Jaden Duggar's a rookie. Sure, they could consider him a will, but that would be, it would be a little quick. He seems like more of a project. So when you look around, Tatum Bethune is Fred Warner's backup. So the only person that looks like the obvious choice to back up Dre Greenlaw, who, like you said, is struggled with injuries throughout his career, is Nick Martin. So, and this is going to play into my pick in the offense, which I'm not getting to yet, but I mean, there's a chance that we could see a lot of Nick Martin next season, like a lot. And it could be as Dre Greenlaw's backup if Dre Greenlaw went down. It could be as like the Sam linebacker, who, again, depending on how you're using him, could be Sam, it could be more of a Jack where you want him rushing more, or it could be more of a Sam where you can rush him, but he's more there to fill the linebacker role. But that's kind
what
of
if he ends up being like a special teams demon, right? Like Luke Gifford was last season, and now he's their Pro Bowl linebacker, and it's just Nick Martin instead of Gifford. There are plenty of different ways for him to be that guy.
Yeah, very true. Very true. I'm just very interested. It's going to be one of the things I look for in training camp. Like one of the first things I want to see or hear about is how are they using Nick Martin? Is he the third linebacker on the field with Fred and Dre during like a base down look, or is he just Dre's backup? There's an opening there at Sam linebacker. Maybe they think Jaden Duggar can immediately slide into that spot, which I kind of doubt. They hopefully don't want Luke Gifford in that spot again because he was not great last season. So, it'll be interesting. It's absolutely an X factor. Nick Martin he could start as like the rotational Sam linebacker. If Dre Greenlaw gets hurt, boom, he's a starter. Like that's just, and the odds of Dre Greenlaw getting hurt are very high. That's just the way it is at this point in his career. So we could see a lot of Nick Martin, man. I think I just really quickly called him Lick Martin, which is kind of funny now that I say it. But yeah, that's an interesting pick, dude. I could sit here and just kind of contemplate in my head, man, how could we see this guy? Because there's several ways in which he can get into it. And he's kind of like the type of player that the 49ers want on the field. Right. He's fast. He can hang as a pass rusher or a blitzer, and he can do all the linebacker stuff. And now he's kind of had a red shirt
not
year.
Been very good the past couple seasons, and in my mind, that's a big reason why the defense is taking a step back. And of course, Greenlaw's fast. Is he the same speedster as he was a couple years ago? Probably not. But if you want that third guy on the field, and assuming that he can just do the simple things like run and cover, that's a guy that you are going to give a chance to at least fail. So that's why I bring up Nick Martin. Where are you going next?
I am going to the backfield. Again, I'm on the offensive side of the ball with running back Jordan James. Now, I don't want to beat a dead horse when it comes to what the expectations, what history's expectations are for Christian McCaffrey this year. Don't have any complaints about anything to do with Christian McCaffrey and the way he works and what he's capable of and his skill set. But there is no denying Father Time. It catches up with us all. And he is at that precipice of when running backs start to break down quickly. But he's also even one step closer to the edge because this is a song lyric, excuse me. Because of what he did last season. Me, KP, and I went over it thanks to Kyle Madsen of Candlestick Chronicles and Niners Wire, who did an awesome article about running backs that have had the kind of production that Christian McCaffrey had last year. It's almost destiny that they are going to take a severe plunge the next season. The only running back that had a season like Christian McCaffrey had last year and didn't was LaDainian Tomlinson, who is one of the greatest running backs of all time and is now chilling. It's been chilling in the Hall of Fame. So that being said, without trying to place any bad juju on Christian McCaffrey, because again, there might not be another guy on the team that works harder than him. You can expect somebody else to get some touches this season. And I think Jordan James is first in line at those touches. Now, can Kalen Black give him a run for his money and make that more of a 50-50 rotation? Sure. But the big thing with me is we have seen almost nothing of Jordan James, no matter how excited everybody wants to be about those like 8 carries when the NFC Championship or whatever
game
it
was on the
like
line.
a blowout. Not NFC Championship, divisional round was like a blowout. But we don't have any idea what to expect, and there's a good chance that he could see 500 plus snaps this season. You know, Kenny 49er says, who is Jordan James? Which is a very valid question. 2024 fifth round pick out of Oregon, running back Jordan James. And so
Kyle Shanahan's 2026 Devonta Freeman.
Right. And you go back and watch Jordan James college tape. I like him. I think he's good. I think that he could be a good player in this offense. The dude is very good when you get down near the end zone, scored a ton of touchdowns and has a good skill set. But man, as of right now, he's probably considered the number 2 behind Christian McCaffrey. And the odds are very good that Christian McCaffrey could miss some time. And in that case, it's likely as of now that Jordan James is the next guy up, which could be awesome. He could have a huge impact on the season, and he could keep the 49ers run game right on churning, or he kind of loses time to Kalen Black. I don't have any expectations for Isaac Grendo back there, nor do I Patrick Taylor Jr. or Sincere McCormick. No offense to those guys. I'm not even sure that Isaac Grendo makes the roster. So again, to sum that up, a very good chance Christian McCaffrey misses time. In that case, as of now, I think Jordan James is the one that steps in after that. And let's see what you got, man. You could be the 49ers bell cow running back and the next greatest gem in fantasy football, or you come in and they realize Kalen Black's already better than you, and that's that.
Yeah, we're going to find out about both those guys, Kalen Black and Jordan James, in preseason, because there's no real reason for Christian McCaffrey to be getting reps in August. I think he's going to have a ton of days off, whether it's practices, joint practices. So we're going to find out pretty quick whether these guys can ball or not. So I think that's going to kind of set the table for Kyle, speaking in Kyle Shanahan's mind and the offensive coaching staff's mind, how much time can we give these guys? How much run can we actually give them? Do we need to, is this a slowly but surely work them in, or can we just roll them out there week one? And I don't want to say timeshare with CMC, because we've never seen that, but maybe it's this thing where they're able to play by the 3rd or 4th series because you can go 2 on, 1 off with CMC. So I think August is going to be a huge month for both James and Kalen Black, just as far as getting familiar with what they can and can't do and how much the 49ers are going to be able to use them. Okay, I went with a defensive lineman, and I went with Romello Height. I think Height is going to be the guy. Again, I'm speaking under the impression that the 49ers are going to score a bunch of points. They're going to have opportunities to rush the passer, unlike last season, because they're able to, their opponent is playing from behind. Their opponent is playing catch-up. Their opponent knows, hey, like, we know if we don't score X amount of points, we're not going to have a chance. So there's not really an edge rusher that, opposite Nick Bosa, obviously, that's going to scare you, that's going to threaten the edge, that has that speed element. And the 49ers really haven't had that. So I think outside of Bryce Huff, obviously, which is, I don't want to say he was a one-year wonder, but we only have 1 year example of him playing. So I'm pretty excited to see what Height can do. And I think he's going to have the opportunities solely because nobody else can do what he does. They can't cover the same kind of ground he does. Keon White was a 2nd rounder, and his pass rush profile is nowhere near as good as what Romello Height can bring to the table. So I think, just speed, length, get off time, the ability to win on games, just to run through run the hoop, as they say. I think he's going to be able to bring a lot to the table that the 49ers really haven't had. Obviously, they wanted that with Bryce Huff. We didn't get to see that with Huff because of the Nick Bosa injury. So I would not be surprised if Height is third on the team in sacks, even as a rookie, just for cleanup opportunities, if for nothing else. So I think this one's pretty easy for me. I think if the pass rush is going to be as good as the 49ers hope, it's going to be because Height produces as a rookie, which is not easy. And I want to make that very clear. To me, defensive line is probably the second hardest position to transition to after offensive line. So like we're putting a lot on him, but this is more about opportunity. I think that matters. So he's going to have a ton of opportunities because other guys on the roster in his position can't do what he can. And then of course he's a draft pick. So he's going to have a chance to fail. The way that Chris Kocurek was talking about, the way that Chris Kocurek was kind of cheering him on in practice, it seems like they have high hopes for him. So I think Height's going to have a pretty solid opportunity this year as a rookie, and then obviously moving forward if he performs like they hope he's capable of.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it was or who said he did this or which video it was in, but apparently Chris Kocurek was doing his little get off drill and Romello Height went and he was like, "Damn."
Yeah, no, he was a fanboy. I have a clip on my phone where he was clapping for Romello Height and like didn't clap for anybody else. Like, oh, okay, like let's take it easy there.
That's funny. Yeah, when he was drafted by the 49ers, I looked up his PFF stuff. Overall, Romello Height had a 92.5 grade, which is elite. His pass rush grade was a 92.6, which is elite. His pass rush grade in true pass sets was a 91.2, elite. And his pass rush win rate was a 21.8%, which is also elite. He was blue. And the 49ers haven't had a guy like that in a while. You know, Bryce Huff is that guy. He's going to be asked to do the same stuff Bryce Huff does, but Romello Height's almost like a streamlined version of that. And again, I don't even know if he'll be as good as Bryce Huff was, especially when Nick Bosa was on the field with Bryce Huff. But the skill set's crazy, man. And when you mention cleanup sacks, I think that has like a negative connotation. Here's what, and not with you, and you didn't give it one, but I think people hear that and they're like, "Oh, that's a sack that he didn't earn." No, yeah. That's a sack that a worse team wouldn't get, and that's what happens.
That's a great way to put it.
When a quarterback, like you feel like he should have been sacked in that moment, and then Purdy does it to teams all the time, where you feel like you've got him, but then just somebody on that defensive front is not fast enough to close the distance. So the quarterback has enough time to skirt out of the pocket and just kind of jog their way to the sideline and try and hit somebody downfield. You want cleanup sacks. When you don't have cleanup sacks, you have quarterbacks escaping the pocket, and most of the quarterbacks they face nowadays are athletic, so you don't necessarily want a quarterback getting out of the pocket, and at the very least, he takes off running for 10 or 15 yards. So cleanup stats are great, man, and what's nice about Romello Height in that department is he's just fast. Like, he's as fast as a linebacker, man. I don't even know. What was his 40 time?
4.64.
Woo!
But yeah. Even more impressive than that, his vertical was 39 inches, which is insane.
Which explains that clip you showed us where he ran that stunt and he basically in 2 strides covered like 5 yards horizontally.
Yeah. 2 gaps and 2 strides is insane. I think that's a really good point just about motor, because that's what matters, right? Brock Purdy is a very good example of that as well. The guys aren't catching him or sacking him after 2.5, 3.5 seconds or whatever, because they're almost giving up on the play. And that's not something that Height did. One of his best traits actually is his motor, is his just ability to not give up. So I think that's going to play very well. So you have short area explosiveness. You have the ability to just be relentless, for lack of a better word. So I think that's going to go a long way playing on this defensive line specifically. So that's another reason. So another stat, he was actually 3rd in this past draft class in quick pressure percentage. So he was 4th in overall pressure percentage, but when you time it down to pressures under 2.5 seconds, he was 3rd. So he's getting after the passer consistently, more consistently than the guy that was drafted on the other side of the line of him. So I think Hyde it's just a really good landing spot for him to succeed.
I'm trying to find this right now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it because it's just a quick little stat on because Brock Purdy was named to the NFL's top 100. He was at 85, which obviously George Kittle loved. There it is right there. So Brock Purdy's 3.14 seconds average time to throw was number 5 in the NFL. And you just said that Romello Height was where with quick pressure percentage, and how much time is a quick pressure?
So a quick pressure is any pressure under 2.5 seconds. And he was third in this draft class among all edge rushers.
So if he was third in college football and getting there in under 2.5 seconds, and Brock Purdy was 5th in the NFL with the 3.14 second average time to throw, that means you are getting to almost all quarterbacks in the NFL before they can throw it. Like that's even the ones that have the quick releases. I don't know what the quickest time to throw in the NFL is, but if Brock Purdy's 3.14 seconds is number 5, and Romello Height was third in college football, getting there in under 2.5 seconds, that's a lot of problems. That's knocking a lot of quarterbacks off their spot. And that's another thing too, is even if he doesn't get the sacks, even if he finishes with 5 sacks, but you watch that guy just continually either run the arc or look like he's run the arc and darting inside and just forcing quarterbacks into weird situations, there are other players on this defensive line that can bring the guy down. You got Nick Bosa on the other side. You've got Oso Odigizua in the middle, and whoever's going to be next to him. We'll see if that's Michael Williams at some point, and we'll see what Alfred Collins can do. But just having that speed and that presence to make things weird for the quarterbacks in a hurry, like with speed, could take this group to the next level. Now, the biggest, obviously, knock on Romello Height is he's small and he's light. And, he is 6'3", 239 pounds. Your average NFL offensive tackle is what, 6'6", 300 pounds?
Yeah, probably
6'7", 305. Yeah. So if an offensive tackle gets their hands on him, it's not lights out, but it's tough. That's where he's going to try and get to quarterbacks basically untouched. Von Miller is 6'3", 250. Okay, so he's only about 10 pounds behind Von Miller. And you saw how Von Miller won. It was rarely with like power. It was with this smooth display of pass rush moves. So it'll be interesting to see how Romello Height consistently wins.
They can keep him clean because they have like a Sam O, they have a Michael Williams, they have depth in front of him where he doesn't have to get worn down throughout the game because he's playing every down. So he can be that designated pass rusher, kind of like Dee Ford was. And that's how he can stay fresh and keep himself, just clean throughout the game. So I think that's going to go a long way if obviously it works out that way.
Okay. So we've got my X Factors. Again, Ricky Pearsall, kind of the one that's too obvious to be called an X Factor, but I stuck with it. Tight end Jake Tonjes and running back Jordan James. And yours were safety Malik Mustafa, linebacker Nick Martin, and defensive end, edge, all caps, Romello Height.
Yes.
Pretty exciting. That's pretty exciting stuff, man. That's great.
These are the dudes that need to perform, that can be, I don't want to use X Factor because that's boring, but these are the guys.
X-Men.
You can honestly, this is the beast, the professor, if these players perform, I think the ceiling of the 49ers raises drastically. You just go ahead. Yeah, we can do it.
You know who Guy Haberman is, right? Who stepped in for Greg Papa. Obviously has great hair. Guy Haberman has great hair. Anybody knows that. They did it one time when he was still with John Haberman, when it was still Guy Haberman. No, John Middlecoff and Guy. Yeah. And obviously we know Middlecoff's bald.
How much hair?
1 week. I got to find it. But 1 week they used one thumbnail where instead of Middlecoff and Haberman, it was Professor X and Cyclops. Oh, man. And I immediately saw that. I was like, I get the reference. I see what they're doing here. Cyclops, great hair. Professor X, bald. Anyways, so that's another way to integrate X-Men into this podcast. Kenny, last comment says we may be putting up Purdy 30 plus this season. Yeah, I'm expecting a big year out of Brock Purdy. As long as everything stays upright around him, I'm expecting a big year from him. He was 85 on NFL's top 100, which I think is fine considering he missed a huge chunk of the season. And PFF, maybe we'll have to come up with a pod about this at some point. PFF just recently came out with their quarterback rankings, and Purdy was 10th, which I think is reasonable, respectable,
Right.
with some good stats to go along with it. He's just, and then I just happened to click on ESPN's QBR rankings, and Brock Purdy is second. So he is, for a guy that's, I mean, last time what was the argument? He was ranked 17th for somebody, but whatever. We're not going to get into that. KP, good stuff, man. So next week on Monday, we will be doing the 49ers X-Men Part 2, where I am listing my defensive X factors, and KP will be listing his offensive X factors. And we're not going to do any repeats. We're forcing each other to pick other players, so it'll
Think
get
outside that box.
Think outside of it. But there it is, man. It's 45 minutes. We finally managed to land ourselves at the 45-minute mark. So I'm just going to keep rambling until it becomes 46, 47 minutes. I can talk about some X-Men. I'm just kidding. I appreciate everybody who was hanging out in the chat. I appreciate everybody who's listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen to the pod. Whoever's listening to this, if you're on YouTube, make sure you like the video. Make sure you're subscribed. You're obviously already in here commenting. But if you're not catching it live, jump in the comments too. Tell us what you think. And if you're on the podcast, or even if you're on YouTube, jump on the podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate it. We would be in your debt. But as you all know, for another episode, I'm Rob. That's KP. This is Striking Gold, and we are signing out.